I'm Izzah Afifah binti Marizan and this is Dayline. It has been reported that the current Sultanah of Terengganu, Sultanah Nur Zahirah, has filed a suit against the Sarawak Report editor, Ruka Sebrang, who is also the author of the Sarawak Report, the inside story of the YMDB exposed. She claimed that the author had made a defamatory remark about her in that book. The Sultanah alleged that the statement implied she was engaged in corrupt practices and meddled in state administration, as well as influencing the formation of the Terengganu Investment Authority (TIA), which later became YMDB, by utilizing her position. She further claimed that the statement misinterpreted her as assisting businessman Low Tech Joe Low in becoming TIA's advisor. As such, she said the statement had slandered and tarnished her reputation. The Sultanah sued Ruka Sebrang and publishers Gerak Budaya Enterprise and Chong Ton Sin and printer Vinil Press Sdn Bhd for defaming her in the book for 200 million ringgit. She also sought an order for the publisher to withdraw the book and for the printer to stop printing it.
From the news report, we had decided to use this case as our case review. So, without wasting any time, let's jump off to the contents of this video. In this case, the cause of action that has been established is defamation. This is because, in this case, Sultanah Nur Zahirah filed the suit in relation to defamatory statements in the book, which is the Sarawak Report, the inside story of the 1MDB exposed, and demanded general damages of 100 million ringgit from each defendant. Since this case involved defamatory words which are also libel, it falls under defamation. In this case, the parties involved are Sultanah Nur Zahirah as a plaintiff and Claire Louise Brown, Gerak Budaya Enterprise publisher Chong Ton Sin and Vinil Press Sdn Bhd as the defendants.
Moving on to the statement of facts of this news. The Sultanah alleged that in the book, the author made a defamatory statement about her. The Sultanah claimed the statement meant she was involved in corrupt activities and meddled in state administration, as well as using her position to influence the funding of the Terengganu Investment Authority (TIA), which ultimately became YMDB. She also stated that the statement misconstrued her as supporting Joe Low, a businessman, in becoming TIA's advisor. As a result, she claimed that the comment had defamed her and harmed her reputation as the Sultanah of Terengganu. She claimed 100 million from each of the defendants, who are Ruka Sebrang and two others.
For this case, we have extracted three main issues. As you can see beside me, the first main issue is whether the plaintiff can bring an action for defamation against the defendants. And from this main issue, we also had extract three sub-issues which involve the elements. The first sub-issue is whether the statements in the book, the Sarawak Report, the inside story of the 1MDB exposed, constitutes defamatory words. The second sub-issue is whether the defamatory words refer to Sultanah Nur Zahirah. And the third sub-issue is whether the defamatory words made by the defendants were published. The second main issue is whether the plaintiff can successfully claim for 300 million ringgit from the defendants. And the last issue is whether the defendants can rely on the defense of apology. So, to answer the first main issue, we will go to the first sub-issue, which is whether the statement in the book, the Sarawak Report, the inside story of the 1MDB exposed, constitutes defamatory words. So for this issue, we have three ways to identify them, which are, in this case, we will be using the natural and ordinary meaning and false innuendo. To prove the natural and ordinary meaning of the statement, we refer to the case of Institute of Commercial Management, United Kingdom, against New Straits Press Malaysia Berhad in 1993. So in this case, the plaintiff sought damages from the defendant for libelous statements made in an article headed British Diploma Mill Step-Up Sales Hustles, which was published by the defendant. The plaintiff claimed that the comments were intended to harm and discredit the plaintiff in its business as an educational institution and examining body, and that the plaintiff's credit and reputation had been harmed as a result by natural and ordinary meanings. And it was held that the words had a considerable propensity to damage the plaintiffs in the eyes of members of society in general, as well as potential students' parents and students themselves. In this case also, the judge referred to the principle of David's time against Canavan in 1918, where Isaac's judge defined, but although the plaintiff is not named in words, he may nevertheless be described so as to be recognized, and whether the description takes the form of word picture of an individual or the form of a reference to a class of persons of which he is or believed to be a member or any other form, if in the circumstances the description is such that a person hearing or reading the alleged would reasonably believe that the plaintiff was referred to, there is sufficient reference to him. Furthermore, the case of Syed Hussein Ali against Syarikat Pencetakan Utusan Melayu Berhad in 1973 is referred for the false innuendo whereby the plaintiff filed a libel action against the first defendant, who is the editor of a newspaper, alleging that the words complained about referred to the plaintiff were false innuendo, namely that the plaintiff was dishonest, disloyal to the government, a subversive element, an irresponsible politician, an ungrateful person, a supporter of President Sukarno, and an instigator of unrest in the country. In this case, the judge has used the principle from Corton, Lord Justice in the Capital and Counties Bank against Henry and Sons case, where he said that one must consider not what the words are, but what conclusion could reasonably be drawn from it, as a man who issues such a document is answerable not only for the terms of it, but also for the conclusion and meaning which persons will reasonably draw from and put upon the document. It was held that the remarks implied that the plaintiff was dishonest, disloyal to the government, a subversive element, and ungrateful by inference or implications. Therefore, the plaintiff's claim was granted. Similarly, in this current case, the defendants had written and published a book that contains words or statements that could defame or lower the plaintiff's position and reputation. In the book of the Sarawak Report, the inside story of the 1MDB exposed, the plaintiff had claimed that according to statements, she was involved in corruption and meddling with the Terengganu government's administration, as well as using her position to influence the formation of the Terengganu Investment Authority, TIA, afterwards known as One Malaysia Development Berhad, which is 1MDB. She also claimed that the remarks show she had assisted fugitive businessman Low Tek Jo, also known as Joe Low, in becoming a TIA advisor. When the plaintiff easily senses that the statement would tarnish her reputation, it can be seen that the statements in the book are clear and understood by men of ordinary intelligence who have the tendency to make them look down on the plaintiff. Plus, the statements also were not true, which led to defamation towards the plaintiff. So, therefore, the statement written in the book and published by the defendants constitute defamatory words.
Next is the second sub-issue, whether the defamatory words refer to Sultanah Nur Zahirah. So here we refer to the case Abdul Khalid and Khalid Jafri bin Bakar Shah against Parti Islam Malaysia and others. In this case, the court held that it was not necessary that the words should refer to the plaintiff by name, provided that the words would be understood by a reasonable person to refer to the plaintiff. The court will have to consider whether the libel designated the plaintiff in such a way so as to let those who knew him understand that he was the person alluded to. It was not necessary that all the world should understand the libel. It was sufficient if those who know the plaintiff could make out that he was the person referred to. The judge also followed the case of Jones and E. Halton and Company, whereby it was immaterial that the defendant did not intend to refer to the plaintiff, or did not even know of his existence. The question was, would the words complained of be understood by a reasonable person who knew the plaintiff to refer to him? If so, they were published off and concerning the plaintiff, no matter what the intention of the defendant may have been. Just like in the current case, whereby the Sultanate claimed that the words in the book of the Sarawak Report, the inside story of the 1MDB exposed, does contain defamatory remarks that could tarnish her reputation. She claimed that the words would make her look like the one who was involved in corruption. Thus, her image as patron of various organizations, uniform bodies, educational institutions, and also as a chancellor of 2 universities in Terengganu State could be affected. The same concept applies in the case referred to, where the words do not need to specify the Sultanah's name but are adequate if anybody reading them believes it is about her.
The last sub-issue is whether the defamatory words made by the defendants were published. So for this issue, we refer to the Section 2 of the Defamation Act, whereby the Act stated the words includes pictures, visual images, gestures, and other methods of signifying meaning. The publication is in writing and took place in a book where the statement containing defamatory words was written. It was communicated once people read it as the book is about 1MDB, which was an important and popular topic among Malaysian citizens. We refer to the case of Parliament against W. Hill and Co. Limited in 1891, where the plaintiffs were two partners in a business relationship. They had a contract to sell their house on Borough Road in London. Meanwhile, they rented the defendant a hoarding that had been constructed on the site. The defendant sent the partnership a letter arguing that the partnership had no authority to allow the hoarding because of the property sale. It was held that the libel had been published. It was foreseeable someone else would read the letter. Similarly, in this current case, the books are meant to be read by people who bought it, and it can be agreed that there must be at least one person who has bought and read the books, as they were sold at many bookstores. It would be different if in fact the book was still in the drafting process and not proceed with the printing, hence no publications. And apart from that, we also need to see whether the publication of defamatory words to a third party is foreseeable. However, in this case, the book has already been published and read by many people. Therefore, the defamatory words made by the defendants were published and read by many people.
Now we're moving on to the next issue, that is whether the plaintiff can successfully claim 300 million ringgit from the defendants. So here we refer to the case of Tan Sri Datuk Vincent Tan Chin Yun against Haji Hassan bin Hamzah, whereby the court awarded the plaintiff the damages of 10 million ringgit. Before the court awarding the damages, there are several factors that need to be looked into, including the following. The first one is the position and standing of the plaintiff. Second, the gravity and seriousness of the libel. Third, the mode and extent of the publication. Fourth, the mental distress, hurt, anxiety, and mental anguish caused to the plaintiff as a result of the libel. Fifth, the uncertainty undergone in litigation. 6. The conduct of the defendants from the time of the libel down to the very moment of the verdict. And 7. The absence or refusal of any correction, retraction, or apology. It is further explained in the case of Lingua Press, Sejabrahan and others against Tan Sri Datuk Vincent Tan Chin Yun. The court referred to the case of John and MGN Limited, whereby Chief Justice Sir Thomas Bingham said, in assessing the appropriate damages for injury to reputation, the most important factor is the gravity of the libel. The more closely the defamation touches the plaintiff's personal integrity, professional reputation, honor, courage, loyalty, and the core attributes of his personality, the more serious it is likely to be. The extent of publication is also very relevant. A libel published to millions has a greater potential to cause damage than a libel published to a handful of people. A successful plaintiff may properly look to an award of damages to vindicate his reputation, but the significance of this is much greater in a case where the defendant asserts the truth of the libel and refuses any retraction or apology than in a case where the defendant acknowledges the falsity of what was published and publicly expresses regret that the libelous publication took place. To answer this issue, after it has been proved that in the statements there were defamatory words, the court must look into the factors that have been mentioned before awarding the damages to the plaintiff. The most common damages given in defamation cases range from 100,000 ringgit to 400,000 ringgit. Even so, we cannot compare one libel case to another. Each libel case is different and in a class by itself, with its own set of circumstances. It is no doubt the position of the Sultanah indeed highest, as she is the wife of the Sultan of Terengganu State. We also must look at the gravity of the libel, whereby if it affected the honor of the plaintiff as a Sultanah and people started to question her position, it shows how serious it is the libel. In determining the extent of the publication, the book has been published since 2018, implying that it has been purchased and read by a significant number of individuals individuals, implying that it has a larger potential to do damage. Only after all of the circumstances have been considered and found to be in favour of the plaintiff may the court decide to award damages to the plaintiff. However, we believe that the damages of 100 million ringgit from each defendant were excessive and hence were not fair. To conclude, the plaintiff may not be successful in claiming an amount of 200 million ringgit from the defendants as it is unreasonable. However, she still can claim damages from the defendants.
Now we move on to the last main issue, which is whether the defendants can rely on the defense of apology. So to answer this issue, we take a look at Section 10, Subsection 1 of Defamation Act 1957, whereby it was stated that in any action for defamation, the defendant may give in evidence in mitigation of damages that he made or offered an apology to the plaintiff for such defamation before the commencement of such action or as soon afterwards as he had an opportunity of doing so, in case the action shall have been commenced before there was an opportunity of making or offering such an apology. If the defendants can demonstrate that they are genuinely sorry and regret what they have done, the damages may be reduced. The defendants would be too late to halt the publication of the book as it was published in 2018, and many people had already read it. An apology may be a viable defense, even though the details of the case may need to be scrutinized in order to establish the efficiency of any supposed apology by the defendant. A clear and genuine apology to the plaintiff for any misleading impressions or confusion caused by the publication, as well as explanation that the defendants regretted its publications, satisfy the prerequisites for a complete and candid retraction of the allegedly offending content. Hence, the defendants should apologize before the commencement of the action or soon afterwards in case they do not have a chance to it earliest, and it should be a sincere apology. Therefore, in conclusion, the defendant can rely on the defense of apology as long as they apologize to the plaintiff sincerely and show to the plaintiff the evidence that they truly sorry. So moving on to the comment and opinions based on this case review. For the first main issue, we agree with the decisions because all the elements of defamation have been established, whereby the statements in the book have clearly defamed the plaintiff and could tarnish her reputation as a Sultanah of Terengganu. Besides, the book has been published since 2018, so it means that there are many people who have read the book. The plaintiff will not have brought the lawsuit against the defendants if the statement did not refer to her, but she did, demonstrating that the statement does refer to her. It can be seen in the case of Newstead and London Express Newspaper Limited in 1940. A newspaper described the bigamy trial in detail and identified the defendant as Harold Newstead, a 30-year-old Camberwell man. A second guy named Harold Newstead also, who is from Camberwell as well and is in his mid-30s, filed a libel lawsuit against the publication. He insisted that it had been mistakenly identified as the subject of the piece, and the court held that the evidence supported the jury's conclusion that the plaintiff could have been intended by the remarks complained of. An accusation of libel cannot be successfully defended by pointing out that the statement were accurate about another individual. Hence, the defendant was liable. So in the current case, there is only one Sultanah Terengganu and it cannot be mistaken by anyone else. Therefore, if there is any defamation in regards to the Sultanah, automatically people will think of the only Sultanah Terengganu.
Next, we also agreed with the decision for the second main issue, as it is true that claiming for 100 million ringgit for each defendant was not reasonable. It is not fair and unreasonable for the normal citizen to carry the weight of paying the damages. This is because not everyone is born with a silver spoon. The defendants may receive lots of payment from the income of the book sale, but still 100 million ringgit from each defendant is too much. If a specific prominent figure files a defamation lawsuit for 100 million ringgit, that would not automatically entitle them to 100 million ringgit should their claim be successful. In the case of Tan Sri Datuk Vincent Tan Chi Yun and Haji Hassan Hamzah and others, the court awarded the plaintiff a total of 10 million ringgit in damages against the defendants. This is the highest award of damages for defamation that the Malaysian courts have awarded. There are no cases that have surpassed such damages yet. Malaysian courts have been tolerable in awarding damages in the defamation cases. The reputation of a person or organization is also subjective and elusive. The courts have a very tough time figuring out how much a plaintiff's reputation is actually worth. Therefore, while determining the amount of damages to be granted to a winning plaintiff in a defamation cases, the courts will consider all the elements that have been discussed in the second issue earlier. In our current case, we deem that the amount of the damages is quite high for the defendants that consists of the editor, the publisher and also the printer, whose income is less than 1 million ringgit a year. However, it is hoped that the amount of damages which will be decided by the court would teach the defendants to publish things more cautiously and avoid defaming people without sufficient justification. It is undeniable that the Sultana's claim for the damages is substantial given that she has to preserve royal institutions while restoring her reputation as the wife of one of the states in Malaysia. Compensations or damages serve as a deterrent to the public not to spread the rumours without checking it first so as to give rise to the defamation. We thus hope that everyone will keep in mind while posting or publishing something in order to prevent defaming someone in a way that might harm their reputation in the eyes of the general public. With that, it marks the end of our presentation. That's all from us. Thank you so much.